What's going on YouTube? It's Andre here from Card Games United, starting with the new set that just released, AL4. Team is a Vanguard deck profile,
We're
strongest
using
team.
just released here pretty loosely.
Yeah. So here we have probably one of the cheapest decks actually in the game, for something that's actually not half bad. Get this deck for about 55, but this is Ninja Beasties, Murokumo. The Zanbaku build, so we'll get right into it. It's an Excel clan, so you get these nice extra circles. So here's your starter, Cat Devil. Uh, your standard draw card when wrote upon.
And for some reason, not a crit trigger this time.
Yep, they made him a starter now. Yeah, don't really have much else. Next we got 4 Dueling Dragon Zanbakus. If you don't know what this guy does, once per turn you can counterblast 1, soul blast 1. You search your deck for a card with a arrestor in its name, you can call it. Zanbaku gains 5k, and both the right arrestor and left arrestor are present during the resolution of the skill. Your opponent cannot ride a grade 3 or greater from their grade 3. It's a really nice card, it's +1. Being able to deny gifts is a pretty cool thing. Hurts decks like OTT, hurts certain Force clans. Punishes people for also quote-unquote misriding, because let's say if you're going up against Spike Brothers and they have to ride the Juggernaut, and you just kind of trap them on there, it's not going to be a fun time for them, so you really do punish your opponent for not getting the right grade 3 ride. Against Excel decks, they don't really care much because they only need the one Excel circle, so there's a bit of a bad matchup there, but overall the card's solid. It's a +1. Be warned, this deck doesn't have any counter chargers, so you do have to be careful with the tempo you play this deck at, and once you do run out of counter blasts, he does become vanilla, so be careful. Next, we run 3 Twin Swordsman Musashi. This card is really good. I'd love to run 4 of it, but at that point, you would have to change the deck ratios to either be only 8 grade 3s or 10 grade 3s. And I don't think you really want to be going 10 grade 3s because that clogs a little bit too much of your hand. It's not like Aqua Force or Nova Grapplers, which may benefit from it, or high roll decks that don't really care about those ratios anyways. He does give you an Excel marker, so if you do get stuck on him, you are able to play a little bit. If you don't know what he does, when he attacks, it's both a Vanguard and a Rearguard ability, which is really nice. If you have more Rearguards than your opponent, he gains 5k, and your opponent must drop 2 cards to guard him, including, even if they do Perfect Guard, they still have to drop another card with it. So it's just really nice for eating up the opponent's hands. Probably your best source of pressure. I'd love to run 4, but I think 3 is a perfectly fine number, especially since our next grade 3 can clone him. We're running 2 copies of Covert Dragon Mandala Lord. Probably the best backup grade 3 in here. It's a shame that his first skill is on ride, because when you do ride him, counter blast 1, soul blast 1, you can clone 2 units, and they don't go back to the deck, which is really nice. So getting a +2 on ride's nice. He does have an Excel marker. We aren't running his support, so he is a little bit vanilla after that, because you're never going to use that second ability. I have considered dropping it, maybe just to go pure Zanbaku, but I don't think you want to be running the vanilla grade 3, the one that doesn't have an Excel marker. It's not very good because it needs to be trove checked to get that extra attack. And like I said, I think there aren't grade 2s or grade 1s that you want to be running as 1-up techs because they're honestly not very good. So just 9 grade 3s, 2 Mandala Lords. It's really good in the mirror matchup actually because you just get that first turn rush.
The Wombo combo.
Yeah, 4 copies of Left Arrestor. So this is part of your Zanbaku ride lock combo. If you want to be going for the full, you can't stand, can't ride, you need to have this card in hand and then call out Ride Arrestor. There's a very specific way that you have to be doing the combo, but his ability alone is if you have another card with Arrestor somewhere on your rear guard, when he attacks, you can Soul Blast 1, gain 5k when it attacks the Vanguard. So it's just a Night Beat Stick and get over force numbers, which this deck has a difficult time doing. Obviously, it's a 4-of because you want to have as many copies as possible for a Zanbaku build. Next, we run 4 copies of Right Arrestor. So if you have a Vanguard with Dueling Dragon Zanbaku, and if you have another rearguard with a Restaurant's name, you can counterblast 2, put a card into your soul. Your opponent's Vanguard cannot stand during the next stand phase. A lot of people are like obsessing over this Wombo combo where you're like you can't ride and you can't stand, but the difficult thing about that is this deck doesn't have any countercharging options. So when you do this, you oftentimes don't have any plays for the subsequent turns if they do survive, which they often might actually, because this deck, outside of Musashi, doesn't really put a lot of pressure on the opponent whatsoever. Um,
When you say it, if you're like, say, triggering well, things like that, you get a lot of things on board early, it's worth going for, even if it's not against a deck you would usually use it against, something like that.
I mean, it's more of like I actually use it more as like a Hail Mary. Like if I'm losing the game and I need to find some way to get back in, then I'll go for it. But if you're already in the game, then you should only be going just Zanbaku because you just want to keep them from riding and keep them from getting gifts, and just sort of use the multi-attacking of just having Excel markers to basically whittle down the opponent slowly. Like when I started making this combo, the main focus of the deck was when I was losing more. But when I started toning it down a little bit, playing a little bit slower, and just preventing them from riding, that's when I started getting more wins with this deck because, again, this skill just costs so much resources in conjunction with Zanbaku that you're not going to really have too many follow-up plays after that. So you need to be very careful as to when you're going for it. So just keep that in mind. Next, we run 4 copies of our only Triple R and a very strange card, Swift Archer Fushimi.
This is the one that everyone wished would countercharge.
Yep. By the way, if you end up pulling this in a box, you lost a lot of money because this card's like 40 cents, even though it's Triple R. Did you pull a lot of Fushimis?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
The if because the box opening is up on our channel, and
Oh
the
yeah, you
triple
pulled
R's
like
in
2.
both were Fushimi, Alice, and some other Pale Moon thing.
As long as yeah, that's a bad. This is a bad pull.
Yeah.
And the card's actually, it's just a weird card in general. So if you have, he has continuous ability during your turn. Is if you have 4 more regards, he gains 5k. That's probably what you run this card for. Is really just that. The deck with Zanbaku and like Million Rat does have some ways to plus, like hard pluses. So it's not that difficult to get 4 more regards, especially having Excel circles. But just like the second ability, just so weird and out of place for what this deck wants to be doing.
I remember back in Vanilla Vanguard with Bari and the original version of this card, it was all about sniping starters, which were usually pivotal to the strategy, but without starters, you kind of have to hope someone has something
Yeah, like
that they need in the back row.
I mean, the on place ability is free, so it's not like I'm really complaining too much. But it's just such an it's just such a weird ability. I almost end up never using, unless if there's like some problematic grade ones you may want to snipe, like maybe a Gaius for Kagero, maybe a Marin for Royals, Purple Trapezist if Pale Moon left it out on the board is problematic. So like outside of maybe a few matchups, or Commander Laurel. I mean, that's probably the biggest grade one you want to be sniping. So other than that, like it's an okay card. I mean, it's free for both of what it does. I mean, you don't really have much other options actually in Murokumo. So it's just
And it helps you hit force.
Yep. Next we have a very strange card. Got these hot stamped promos. Shout out to my boy Derek. Check out his card shop at Alliance Rift Gaming. So this card, if you can counterblast 1, it's an act ability. If you don't have another copy of him on the board, you can call another copy of him on the board, and that copy will lose 4k until the end of the turn. It's a decent early game card. Like if you go first, it's really your only source of early game in this deck, which is another complaint I have about it. Like if you go first, you can plop one up in the front row, and then maybe just call another one as like a booster for your Vanguard and make it 13k, so it's a little harder to guard. Like other than that, I mean the card's nice, I guess, if you're playing Mandala Lord, because it can help fill your board up outside of like Zanbaku. So it's also the only 8k grade. It's also the only 8k base for a grade 1 to run, which is driving me nuts. But the grade 1 lineup in Murokumo, I think, is legitimately the worst in standard. Like these grade 1s are not impactful at all. So
they're mostly like power boosts and stuff, right?
Yeah, it's just like weird power boosts. Like there's specific Mandala Lord support you can run the vanillas. So I mean, this card's not the greatest, but you don't really have too many other options. Next, we go 4 copies of Stealth Rogue of Silence, Shinji
Mabaru.
Yeah. So, I've gone back and forth with this card, but I ended up just running this card at 4 because it's just like, screw it. Murokumo doesn't have any other grade 1 options. So, when he boosts a unit, 2 of your units with the same name as boost unit gain 3k, so it does help hit 4 clans. But you kind of need, it's kind of just weird though, because you kind of need like 2 of these on the board, and then boosting 2 of the same thing, so at least one of the columns can get a 6k boost, so it hits above the 23k mark against force clans. I mean, the card's free. It is a 7k base, so like, you're in this awkward position with Murokumo, where like chances are you're going to be writing a 7k and a 9k, especially if you're going second against force. That's a bit awkward. So, but like, you don't. The other options you have are like the grade 1 that's Mandala Lord support, which I wouldn't recommend running 4 copies of a card for a card you only play as a 2 of.
Well, this does also by itself. Right? No, yeah, I'm adding the 3 twice there. I guess it could boost a rearguard grade 3 to 22.
Yeah, like it'll make it 15k. Your grade 2s will become 19k, which is 10k guard against force, and usually you'd be hitting for like 16 or 15. So, I mean, the card's not bad. I mean, it's free, so.
I mean, it makes Left Arrestor and Fushimi 24.
Yeah.
Which isn't bad.
The next card is Stealth Dragon, Amatsu Snipe. During your turn, if something was called from the deck, this thing gets 5k. It's just free value. I mean, it's not the greatest card in the world, but I mean, it doesn't have any cost for just being a 12k beater, so. And again, you really don't have anything else to run, so.
Makes Left and Fushimi 26 if you're playing premium.
Trigger lineup. So, 4 draw, 4 crypt. This is going to be Rainbow.
This is actually a deck I've seen people debating the grade 1 PGs for, just so you can fit in more front triggers.
Yeah, I actually thought about that too, because like honestly the grade 1 lineup is such ass that you don't really miss any of these cards that much. And I was thinking about that because then you could just cut these out and just run like 8 crit 4 front. I mean, as of right now, Rainbow triggers have actually not been too bad for me, because.
I do see a lot of people arguing for the front trigger just because it makes everything require shield instead of just something, so you can whittle out hand faster.
Yeah.
It helps protect some of your combo pieces, things like that.
That's the biggest thing. I've been going back between like 5 fronts, 3 crits, 5 draws. You know, like maybe 6 front, 6 draw, 6 crit, 6 front, or 6 crit, 6 draw. And just what I concluded is that both of these are equally valuable to the deck. So yeah, as you said, the front triggers are important because like this deck does not hit above 23k, hardly even hits above 22k to be honest. So one defensive trigger does mean that like a lot of your attacks just go down the drain. It's not like Aqua Force where you have Maelstrom to make 23k, or Golden Beast Tamer being able to give 3k to the front row at certain points. You're very reliant on these front triggers to be able to make your things be able to survive a defensive trigger. By the way, if you do check these 2 on your twin drive, you're probably going to do really well that turn. The crits are great because early game, you don't want people just no-guarding your Vanguard all the time and being like, ha, you only won fronts. So the crits can show up as a nice surprise. They get early damage in because this deck does have a really difficult time just like actually pressuring the opponent outside of like Musashi. So these crits can kind of just show up and be like, I just got extra free damage in. The crit's also great in Musashi because you have to drop 2 cards to guard that dude. And with the crit on, that's just like really good pressure. Again, 4 draws, 4 heals, because we want to run PGs, and I guess drawing cards is important because you do need to see your arrestor, which is why I see some people run 5 or 6 heals because we like to heal. So that's really it for the deck profile.
Alright, you know what we're going to talk about next. What are the matchups?
So, the community seems to have a consensus that this deck is tier 1, and when I first got it, I was like, this deck sucks. But as I played with it a little more, I mean, it's not half bad, so.
Well, so the consensus I've seemed to seen is that this is essentially anti-meta.
Yeah, so people will say that, like, Standard is actually a good spot right now because we're in this format where the Tier 1 decks are Murokumo, OTT, and Shadows. One from each gift. Murokumo supposedly beats OTT.
That's what I've heard. I've heard it beats OTT because you can stop them from getting gifts and getting deers.
Mm-hmm.
It beats Kagero because you can stop them from switching into Waterfall.
Yeah, I've tested against Kagero. It has had a lot of success against Kagero. Shadows is almost unwinnable, though. At the ARG I just went to this Sunday, I had 3 straight Shadows matchups to start the day. It did not go well for me. I ended up starting out 1 and 2. Shadows is just so difficult because, like, just PvD being like, oh, kill 3 of your rear guards. Like, granted, this is an Excel deck that can actually Superior Call, which is nice. So it doesn't hurt as bad as, say, if they do it to, like, Aqua Force or Pale Moon. But
it doesn't have the degree of plussing that, like, an OTT does that can
yeah,
take it out of that.
So it also just makes it so much harder just to keep your Zanbaku lock going up. So, like, the only hope you really have against that deck is if you can, like, trap them on, like, Dark Dictator or the rare grade 3, I think, what's his name, Carr or something?
Bahabakar.
Yeah, and even then, those two have Axe abilities that can just help them either retire your things and minus you in the case of Dark Dictator and he gets really big, or Carr just to be able to +1 every turn. So, it's just a really difficult matchup. It's not totally unwinnable. Your worst matchups are actually Pale Moon and Aqua Force. Strangely enough, because those decks don't care about rewriting, because they only need the one Excel marker, they have very solid aggro games that can just overwhelm this deck. It can quickly get it to 4 or 5 by the time you ride up to grade 3. And they also don't care about the full Zanbaku lock, because Pale Moon has enough cards where they can get about 6 or 7 attacks off between Trapezist and Nightmare Alice, where they don't even need Golden Beast Hammer to attack that turn. And then, like, Aqua Force is the same thing between, like, Tidal Assault and, like, Algos and, like, Diamantes. You can easily get between, like, 6 or 7 attacks when they're already on, like...
You could also technically still restand your Maelstrom.
Yeah, so that's another thing. On that 3rd and 4th battle, you're just kind of just, like... There's, like, this whispering voice that's like, hey, take a damage, and all your hard work is done. So those are your 2 toughest matchups, actually, in my opinion. Is Aqua Force and Pale Moon just because they can out-aggro you, but, I mean, other than that, your Force matchups are kind of a 50-50 toss-ups. Like, Royals can actually do decently well if they're on Alfred or even Soul Saver. Which is actually why I took Alfred early out of my deck, because just getting trapped on that against this is just terrible. I haven't tested against Dark Irregular, so I don't know how that goes.
From what I hear, if you catch them on the Demon Eater, it's devastating.
Yeah. Like, other than that, like, OTT, I haven't personally tested, but supposedly it's one of your easier matchups. But other than that, the deck is solid. I don't think it's as hyped as the community is making it out to be. It has its weaknesses, and I do think it just takes a simple meta shift to knock this down a tier. I think with the Ultra Rare collection, I still have seen this deck topping a little bit. So I think it's still viable when the next set comes out. But, I mean...
Because essentially the only counter they put in the Ultra Rare set for it was Angel Feather, but people aren't picking that up because it's sort of mediocre against everything else.
It's like a mediocre deck. I mean, you do, I think, do a little damage.
But we'll talk about that during the set review.
Yep.
Stay tuned for the set review.
Anyways, that's the deck. It's a good deck, fun deck. So, next I will show you probably Pale Moon or Dark Irregulars.
Your lucky number of the day is Destiny Hero Dunker. Don't tell me that's not a number. Shut up. Bye-bye.